Welcome back to Extra Usual, the podcast about life, love, and the universe. This is Vance Hines, and this is my podcast and blog, and I'm excited this week to bring you Marisa Sibley. She is a wonderful young lady. I met her at Gold's Gym. She kicked my ass in body pump, but she's recently got her master's degree in clinical research, and she's starting a new job in clinical research. And she is a very inspiring, very wonderful young lady. She's had issues with eating disorders, and she's very knowledgeable on diets and nutrition, and she's going to talk about her experiences with going through binge eating disorders and what she's worked through, not only in her private life but also through her church life, and how church and their recovery program have helped her through her eating disorder. But I got to know her through Body Pump, where she kicked my ass many times that I would curse her while she would kick my ass. But she is an unbelievable, positive, unbelievably talented young lady, and I'm very excited to have the opportunity to interview her. Kevin Hamels, my cousin, was here with me this time, and my wife Mary, so all three of us got to interview her, and it was a good interview, and I look forward to y'all checking it out. But before I start, I always give you a shout out to Diamond Dallas Page and his DDPY program. Without it, I would not be where I am today. Last Monday, I was under 300 pounds for the first time in 22 years. I've lost 178 pounds since November 20th, and I just feel outstanding doing his DDP yoga and following his DDP nutrition. So I always got to give a shout out to my main man, Dallas Diamond Page. I also want to give a shout out to Chef Eugenio Torres of Fresh Enrico. He does a meal prep service for the local area. Fresh ingredients, fresh food, healthy. It's a healthy health for the health conscious. It's a very nutritious and dietetic way to eat. He prepares them. He is an educated chef, a professional chef. He's worked for hotels. Now he's doing the meal prep business here in Midlothian and Waxahachie and around Ellis County. And he's committed to give me a meal for every 2 pounds I lose, so I'm punishing him with the free meals. But I always give a shout out to Fresh Enrico. If you want to try his meal plan, go to FreshNRico.com. There at his website, you can order his meals individually, a la carte, or you can do the weekly 5-meal plan. They're about $11 each, depending on how you order them. They're always awesome meals. Pop them in the microwave 2 to 3 minutes, and you're set to go. So, Chef Torres, thank you very much. Check out his meal prep. You order on Thursday, he'll deliver on Monday and Wednesday. So, check out Fresh Enrico. So, but I won't hold you any longer. I can't wait for you to get a chance to hear Marisa Sibley and to hear her story and her struggles and what she's done to overcome them, and what a hard-working, dedicated, wonderful person she is. So here is Marisa Sibley.
Well, today we have Marisa Sibley.
That's me.
How are you, Marisa?
I'm great.
All right. I wanted to get you on here because I think you've got an extra usual story to tell. And
define extra usual, please.
Well, that it is a word I came up with.
Okay.
And it came from an old farmer here in Ellis County in Maple named Scott Jackson. I used to volunteer for Habitat for Humanity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I sharpen knives like at some events and donate the money and things. And they advertised me as Vance Hines, knife sharpener extraordinaire.
Ah.
So every time Scott Jackson would see me, he'd say Vance Hines, extraordinary.
Yeah.
And I I can't read extraordinary anymore. All I see is extraordinary.
Yep.
And I never knew if that was a compliment or an insult, but
well, if it helps, I never pronounced it the correct way. Obviously, I always said extraordinary, not extraordinary. So
extraordinary. You say that's the way Scott, and he emphasized extra and the ordinary.
Like it as 2 words.
Yeah.
Extraordinary.
And so, but that a domain name was taken.
Oh, bummer.
But Extra Usual was free, so therefore,
okay.
That's how we got the name Extra Usual.
Okay.
And don't leave here without a shirt. We got a shirt for you.
Oh, awesome! I love free
an
shirts.
Extra Usual shirt and a pin. So
okay.
All right.
Oh, please.
Yeah. The dude. All right. I met Marisa first at the gym at Gold's Gym. She was teaching a body pump class.
Yep.
And went in and took the class, and since then my wife and several friends have been taking the class, and we learned a little bit about Marisa and her story, and first let's where are you from? What do you call home? Let's back up a little.
So my home is Cedar Hill, Texas. And then I moved to Ovilla, far away, down the street. And but that's where I pretty much grew up my entire life. And then I moved to Waxahachie in 2014. But I've pretty much done everything in the area since I was a kid, because Ovilla didn't have anything. I went to school in Red Oak. It was small, didn't really have much yet. And so Waxahachie was the biggest city around. It was where the Walmart was. So we did everything in Waxahachie. So, but I love this city. I love the community here. And now that I'm not in high school and in a rival high school, I can live in Waxahachie and be okay with being an Indian. Now I'll forever be a Hawk.
Red Oak Hawk.
Yes.
That's our arch rival in volleyball.
Oh yeah. Yeah, volleyball is pretty big in Red Oak, for sure.
So what year did you graduate?
I graduated in 2010.
2010. So how old are you?
I am 26.
All right. And so from high school, what did you do?
So after high school, I did my first semester of college at Baylor University, and I hated it with everything that I had in me. I loved it whenever I went there for the summer, for the freshman camp, and then I got into the semester and it just was not the school for me. And so I came home, did some classes at Navarro College here in town, and online, and then once I got about a year and a half into that, I ended up transferring to Tarleton State. But I went to their adjunct campus in Midlothian, and so that's where I did most of my classes. I did some in Fort Worth, and that's where I graduated from. And then
let me ask you this: when you went to Baylor, what did you want to be?
When I went to Baylor, I wanted to be a dietitian. I wanted to be a dietitian for pretty much my entire high school career. I took an extreme interest in nutrition when I was probably a sophomore in high school, and I loved every bit of it, and I loved learning about it, and so I wanted to work in the fitness side of things and be a dietitian in that realm.
So this is a good jumping off point. Why did you want to be why did you have that desire?
Yeah, so I played softball growing up. I actually played just, recreationally and never really went the select way, that route. But he's playing with my wires down here. Oh, he's biting them. Yeah, so I played recreationally, and through that, I just developed a strong love for the sport. Got into playing in high school. I got moved. That's okay. I got moved up to varsity my freshman year because we went to playoffs. And so my sophomore year, I also played on the varsity team. My coach had left after my sophomore year, and so I had started playing softball in my junior year. But since that coach had left, it just wasn't the same, and I just didn't feel the love for the sport anymore, and so I decided to quit. And so I ended up gaining quite a bit of weight because of the fact that I wasn't running a mile almost every single day. I wasn't lifting heavy weights because it was required in athletics, and I just got really lazy, put on a bunch of weight, and then so around my junior year, about halfway through, I ended up kind of trying to lose some of that weight and diet and exercise. And I had done that before for softball to get on the team to make sure that I could run the miles that I was required to run and all that. And so, my junior year, that's kind of what sparked my interest in nutrition. I already had a bit of an interest in it from when I had lost some weight to play softball, but then I just kind of took it to the next level, trying to lose weight just for myself.
At some point, you told me you had been diagnosed with an eating disorder.
Yeah, so whenever I took that bigger interest my junior year, I kind of took it to an extreme level. And I would put myself on a diet, pretty restrictive, but honestly, if you looked at, the health magazines or what, it was about 1,500 calories a day. It was pretty much what, it looked healthy. But for me, the way my mentality was about it, it was very restrictive. And the minute that I broke that diet or I ate something that was quote unquote bad, I pretty much would feel a lot of shame and guilt about that. And then I would end up kind of just overdoing it. I would binge and then feel bad about that. And then the next day I would start over. And eventually it just became a cycle, a vicious cycle of, diet, restrict, break that diet, binge, feel the guilt and shame of that, and then wake up the next day and be like, today's a new day. I'm gonna do it this time. And eventually you just kind of start to feel like a complete failure about it. And there's a lot of things that drive eating disorders, a lot of underlying issues that make you feel like you need to fix something using food or not using food by restricting and dieting. And for me, it was, thankfully, I'm very thankful that I can say that nothing was done to me that, no kind of trauma or anything like that I internalized that made me want to, lose weight or, become beautiful in my own eyes or whatever. A lot of it was just internal things. Mainly I was a 14, 15, 16-year-old girl liking boys that didn't like me back or didn't know how to even show their affections in a healthy way or whatever. And so for a long time I just felt very unchosen, unwanted. And I kind of internalized that to where I did not feel good about myself unless I achieved some kind of like perfect body, that was going to make me feel happy. It was going to, take my pain away, my emotional pain, my mental pain, everything. And that's just, not real. Yeah. And so, but yeah, I wasn't diagnosed by a doctor. Whenever I came back home from Baylor, I ended up taking a psychology class at Navarro, and we did a career project, and I said I wanted to be a dietitian, so that was what my project was going to be on. The teacher, she brought me up to her desk, and she was like, here's my daughter's information. She's a dietitian in Arlington, and you should call her and just, find out about her career and talk to her for your project. And so I went home, and I looked her up, and I'm sitting there, and she's an eating disorder dietitian. And this was probably a good 4 years into my eating disorder behavior. And I was feeling quite out of control with it, which made it all the worse. And it was like on her website, do you do this? Do you feel this way? Is this how you look at food, or is this how you look at exercise? And everything was just a checkbox and a checkbox. And so I ended up calling her, and I was like, hey, Jennifer, this is so-and-so, and I am supposed to be calling you for a report, but I need an appointment. And so I ended up seeing her for probably about 6 or 7 months just for nutritional therapy. And once I the fact of the matter was is that I was using food or a diet to cope with my emotions. And so when I stopped doing that, all of my emotions hit me like a brick wall, and I then started seeing a regular therapist, and I saw her for about a year. But in the midst of that, I began working for Jennifer as kind of like an intern, and became I just loved being in the eating disorder field, feeling like I could use my story to not only relate to other people going through the same thing, but just to see how common it was. It was a little crazy, and a lot of people see that see like eating disorders like anorexia or bulimia is the most common. That's what they think of, but really the most common is definitely binge eating disorder. It's probably the least diagnosed eating disorder. A lot of times it's just passed off as someone who's, unhealthy, but that's kind of, I think, the most common problem going on.
Was that what they diagnosed you with? Was the binge eating disorder?
Well, so at the time it was, that actually wasn't a diagnosis yet. It hadn't come out as an official diagnosis, so it was eating disorder not otherwise specified. But if you looked at it against criteria now, it would be binge eating disorder for sure.
So, and I guess what you're saying is in the DSM-5.
Yes.
In the DSM-4 binging order disorder was not recognized diagnosis.
Right.
But since they just in the last year came out with the DSM-5.
Yeah, it was like 2015 or 2016 that it came out, and they had binge eating disorder classified as an actual eating disorder, which was almost like a win.
Yeah. Did it make you feel? How did it make you feel to have
it made me feel good more for just the people that struggle with eating disorders. The biggest problem that I ran into when I was going through treatment was that my insurance, who I was under my parents' plan at the time, and it was through the school. It was very, very good insurance, but they don't cover eating disorder treatment, and especially they won't cover treatment for eating disorders not otherwise specified, because it's not otherwise specified, so it must not be that bad. And so for people with binge eating disorder now, they're classified as an official diagnosis, and hopefully insurance companies now are covering it. But $125 a session each week for 6 months, that adds up, and it all came out of my parents' pocket, which I'm very thankful for. But it would have been very helpful to have some coverage. So it's heartbreaking to see the costs associated with eating disorders, because they're just not taken very seriously.
Well, what's the treatment, or what's the diet, or what's the treatment for people who are in a similar? I know you're not a doctor or a therapist or anything, but what did they teach you? What did they tell you to do?
So my dietitian basically prescribed intuitive eating, and I say prescribed lightly. It's not like you're going to do intuitive eating. It was more of just learning how to see food as not my enemy, not as something that has no moral attachment, as good or bad. It's something that's supposed to fuel my body. It was understanding, the macronutrients and micronutrients, and but really learning how to not use food to cope. And so that requires developing new eating habits and new perspectives on food, and also learning how to just be self-aware and be able to, think about what's going on rationally without reaching for something to, feel like you're going to fix it. And so for me, it was intuitive eating, and I brought the book because this is the book that I've had since I entered treatment. If you'd like, I can tell you a little bit about it.
Sure, go ahead.
And so
I'm sure she would appreciate the plug.
Oh yeah, well, so
for all our three relatives, yeah.
Shout out. The dietitian I saw, her name is Jennifer Pereira, and she did not write intuitive eating, but Jennifer Pereira is a great professional. She works out of Austin now, I believe. But yeah, Intuitive Eating, it is a book written by Evelyn Tribole and Elise Resch. I believe is how you say her last name. But they're both dietitians, and they've been working in the eating disorders field specifically for several years. But basically the premise of the book, they have an intuitive eating as a philosophy of eating and seeing food. It came out of just seeing person after person after person just not really know how to eat normally. And if you think about babies, they're very self-regulated. They cry when they want food, and then they stop when they're full. When they eat, they eat when they are hungry, and they eat until they're satisfied, and then they're done. But for some reason, as adults, we put all kinds of social constructs around food, and we eat when we're not hungry. We eat past our bodies, telling us that we're full, and it just doesn't really make a lot of sense. And so there's got to be a reason why. And so intuitive eating, it has a number of different principles. It's basically 10 principles. Number 1, it's rejecting the diet mentality. 2, honoring your hunger. 3, making peace with food, which is basically seeing food as not the bad guy. Principle 4, challenging the food police. Principle 5, feeling your fullness. Principle 6, discovering the satisfaction factor. Principle 7, coping with your emotions without using food. Principle 8, respecting your body. Principle 9, exercise and feel the difference. And Principle 10, honor your health with gentle nutrition. A lot of critics of intuitive eating would say that, it's basically eat whatever you want, as long as you're hungry and as long as you stop when you're full. And to an extent, there are no food rules associated with intuitive eating. There's no eat this and not that. It's if you want ice cream, eat the ice cream. Don't see it as good or bad, and don't feel good or bad about eating it or not eating it. But there's a lot more to it that critics kind of don't look into and understand. They kind of take it at face value. So that's unfortunate. But for me, it has completely changed my life. And I feel more freedom now than I ever have before after putting this into practice for several years. And it's a daily challenge. Every time I sit down to eat, my goal is to be as intuitive as possible about it. Whether it's in regards to what I'm eating, how much I'm eating, where I'm eating, and how I'm eating, fast, slow, things like that.
Did it change? It seemed like earlier when you were talking about in high school that your emotions and the way people perceived you were wrapped up in your eating and how you reacted to them. Has that changed as well?
Yeah. So back then I ate so healthy. I was so good. I was such a good person. It's like I deserved an award for, keeping on my diet or something. And now, I mean, I've literally had people eat with me, and they're like, I can't believe you only ate that much, or something simple like that. And it's a very practical thing. Like, I was hungry. I sat down for, maybe it was a salad, maybe it was quesadillas, but I stopped when I was full, and I really savored my food, and I was very mindful about it, and I enjoyed it. And I feel satisfied, and I feel nourished, and I feel like I don't need to eat anymore. And so I can take the rest home with me. It's not that big of a deal, but to people who have not ever seen food that way, it is a big deal. They're like, how can you do that? How can you just walk away from a plate of quesadillas and not eat all of them? Yeah. And so things like that have definitely changed. I don't like to be in conversations a lot of time with people that are, constantly talking about dieting or refer to themselves as good or bad because they stuck to their diet or they didn't stick to their diet, or they're not eating a cookie or they're eating a cookie. I just, it's changed my perspective completely. And for me to not feel the need to eat ice cream because I, overate a couple bites at dinner. It's pretty freeing for sure. And it seems like such a minuscule issue, especially for people who have never really struggled with food before. But, it's the same thing with drugs, alcohol, any other addiction, whether it's a substance or whether it's, anything you turn to. It's freeing. It's always going to be freeing not to turn to those things. So.
That you still have the desire to binge?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I still do sometimes. And the difference in how I used to see myself in those situations versus now, I'm through therapy and through just different recovery processes, I've become very self-aware. And before, I wasn't self-aware about it. It was just, Marisa, you are disgusting. You are so bad for this. It was a lot of guilt and shame. Versus now, it's okay. I wasn't very intuitive and I wasn't being very mindful when I did this, and quick impulse, I needed a fix, and I'm aware of that, and so I'm going to change. I'm going to decide right now. It doesn't have to be tomorrow morning that I decide my new path. I just need to, get right back up. You fell, you got right back up. Used to be, that was just my diet. I fell off my diet, I got right back up. But now it's just like, okay, life. you fell and you got right back up. And so yeah, hope that answers your question.
How do you feel physically about the now that you've been on this diet so long?
Yeah. So I feel much better because I'm just eating like a normal person. It's definitely not that I'm on any kind of a diet. It's just kind of a philosophy of eating. And for me to feel free mentally and spiritually and emotionally, that's gonna affect my whole being. I feel much better. I'm not held in any kind of bondage, anymore. So. What
advice would you have to other binge eaters, young people?
Yeah. So, I think for young people in particular, my food was a tool that I used to cope. It was never the problem. A lot of people, and especially young people, they're not self-aware yet, and they don't know how to put their finger on what's bothering them, or what may be affecting them in a negative way. And for me, going through nutritional therapy to learn how to not cope with food was one thing, but then the real, bridge I crossed was when I got into therapy with just a licensed counselor that dealt with my deep-rooted feelings about myself, where those stemmed from, how I viewed the different situations I was in, and then also just getting into I was involved in Celebrate Recovery for a while, and getting into that program and really dealing with the spiritual aspect of things, which had been a struggle for me also growing up. That just being very open and honest with yourself is what's going to lead you to find freedom through whatever you're struggling with. So my biggest advice to anyone, whatever they're facing, especially with eating disorders, is to just be honest with yourself, because you don't realize how much you're stuffing down, and how much that can accumulate inside you to just be completely unaware of what you're doing, and then all of a sudden you feel like, okay, I've hit a rock bottom. Where did all this come from? And so yeah, being honest with yourself, being transparent with yourself, and finding a love for yourself is definitely my biggest point of advice. But If it's eating disorders in particular, if food is your issue, then I would definitely reach out to a dietitian. And I may be biased, but if you feel like you're struggling with food and how much you're eating of it or how you're perceiving it, or if you feel like it's interfering with your life and social interactions and all that, definitely reach out to a dietitian that specializes in eating disorders or an intuitive eating dietitian. That's what I would recommend. But again, I am not a doctor. I'm not a dietitian myself. So I have no room to prescribe or advise, but that's my 2 cents.
All right. Well, now, what was the Celebrate Recovery that you talked about? Tell them a little bit about that program.
So Celebrate Recovery is a Christ-centered 12-step program. It's very similar to the 12 steps you would see with any other program, but it's Christ-centered. And so for every step, there is a scripture that goes along with that step, and all out of Jesus' mouth from the Sermon on the Mount, pretty much. And so Celebrate Recovery, I got plugged into that through the Avenue Church here in Waxahachie. It was back in 2013. I started going to that church in February, and I guess it was probably about September or October that I had kind of gotten up the nerve to go to Celebrate Recovery, because I had been to therapy for years prior, for probably about 2 or 3 years. And so I was thinking, I've got everything I need under my belt. I don't need Celebrate Recovery. I'm good. And that's kind of what everybody walks in with. They're like, I don't need this. And but I think up until that point, I had just kind of scratched the surface of my recovery. It was kind of doing things on my own, and I kind of mentioned, I haven't really told the story yet, but my relationship with the church, definitely my relationship with God was, the God that I perceived, it was not that great growing up from experiences I had, and so, for me to go into Celebrate Recovery made it that much more difficult, because it was hard enough to get back into a church, but it was even harder to come clean to a God that I had just now started to try to really understand, and so that made it very difficult. But Celebrate Recovery in and of itself, it's at the Avenue at least, and pretty much around the world, it's a worldwide program. It started out in Saddleback Church in California, I believe, and by a guy named Rick Warren and his son. And
didn't he write like the Purposeful
Life?
Life?
The Purpose-Driven Life.
Purpose-Driven Life.
Yes.
Yeah, I listened to that book before.
Yeah. And but so it's going to be the same anywhere you go. But basically, we had a large group where we would worship for 30 minutes or so, and then the second half, the pastor of recovery at the Avenue, Alan Rogers, he's one of my favorite people on the planet, so shout out to him too. He would go through a lesson on one of the steps. And so each month we focused on a step. Over the year, we cover the 12 steps. The second hour, we would break off into small groups, and men would go one direction, women would go the others, and we're separated by issues. And so I would go to the addictions group. There was also a mixed issues group, which I would sometimes go to. They had groups for codependency. Same thing for the men. And then they also have, gender-specific groups. I know I haven't actually been to Celebrate Recovery at the Avenue because of my teaching schedule at the gym in a while, but now I believe even they have a group for women that are coming home from serving in the armed forces, just to be able to sit in a small group and have 3 to 5 minutes at least of open time to basically say anything you need to say and get things off your chest. And then apart from that, going through the actual 12-step program, which is basically where you take the 12 steps, not in a large group setting, but you come into a small group, and over a period of, it could be 12 weeks, it could be 16, it could be more than that, but you go through different workbooks focusing and really digging into each step, and there's questions you answer, and you do an inventory of kind of your past hurts, habits, and hang-ups, and where those things, started, and how you feel about them, and, really just through the 12 steps working through those issues so you can, let them go. It's really hard to just let things go without really dealing with them first. So,
did you work through the program, or did you eventually get to where you were kind of helping with the program?
Yeah, I did. So I went to large group and small group for a very long time, and I tried to do the actual 12-step program twice, and I quit. So the third time was a charm. I got myself a sponsor who I still am connected with for accountability purposes, and just catching up on life and kind of garnering wisdom from. But I got myself connected with a sponsor and worked through those 12 steps, and I believe it took me probably, at least a good 6 months, if not more. But working through that 12-step program really was where, you pull up those weeds from the root. I got specifically involved in the program by just kind of connecting volunteers and doing the first-time guest class. So each time a first-time guest would come in, I would basically go through the program from top to bottom. And the biggest picture I ever gave of it was, if you see it as your yard, you've got your grass, and then you've got your weeds, and you can go through and just going to the large group is going to do a little bit. It's like going out and just mowing. Going to the small group, you're going to dig in a little bit deeper. You're going to mow, you're going to edge, you're going to weed. You're going to make it look all nice and neat, but you still got those weeds there. And until you really get down and dirty and dig up those weeds from the root, they're just going to keep growing back. And so that was really what I kept in mind through my 12-step program was, I've got to find the root of these issues, otherwise they're going to continue to affect my life. And so part of that was spiritual. Part of that was, coming to peace with the experiences I had with church growing up, and knowing that was not all churches, and then also learning that, kind of coming to a faith in Christ, understanding what He did, so that I could live, and just who I am as a child of God. And that really had a huge impact on how I perceive myself, how I perceive other people, and really, that's where all my recovery, I would say, has come from. I had a lot of help with the dietitians and therapists, but Jesus is really the change.
Do you mind if I ask you what experiences you had with the church growing up?
Yeah, sure.
That you've referenced it a couple of times. I was just my curiosity's piqued.
Yes. I think church stories pique a lot of people's interest because they've probably had a lot of bad ones. So my parents didn't raise me going to church. It wasn't because they didn't want me to. It was because they had bad experiences with the church growing up. My mom was raised Catholic, so she was, they had a certain, her family had a certain way of going to church on a regular basis, but she never really understood why she was there. I've never been to a Catholic church, but from what I hear, they stand and they sit, and they stand and they sit a lot, and I'm sure they have meanings behind that, but she did not know. And so she never really had a reason to continue going to church, because she didn't understand it herself. And so on my dad's side, he grew up on the complete opposite end of the spectrum, very, fire and brimstone Southern Baptist, and when I ask him about it today, it was seeing typical. It's the hypocrisy that comes with church sometimes. he went to a very small church with his family, and when he was, grown, he would, go to church, and then that night go to the bar with his friends and see the pastor there, or see a deacon there, or whatever, with somebody that wasn't his wife, or some things like that. And so those are the things that kind of burned him, and it was also very legalistic, and he never understood the reason why, to have a relationship with God anyway. They didn't see it as church was a place to learn about a relationship with God. They just saw it as church was something that you were supposed to do, and if you didn't, you were, a bad person or whatever. And so they didn't raise me going to church, but I did go to church with friends. And I went to different kinds of churches, and I went to churches that I had great experiences at. And then I also went to churches that I didn't have great experiences. But the majority of my church experience growing up was I didn't understand why I was there. It was very legalistic. You can't wear jeans to church on Sunday, things like that. Things that I didn't understand had anything to do with the God I was hearing about. Sunday, they have the altar call, and everybody goes down to the altar, and for some reason I felt a pressure to go to the altar, and then I have a pressure to cry, and I don't know why I'm crying, and and things like that. And the people that I were around, some were good, and some had told me things that I was like, how do you have authority to tell me, like, what's going to happen? I had a youth pastor one time. I was telling her kind of about my future plans, and she said, you don't really need to worry about making plans, because the rapture is going to happen before you graduate from high school. And for me, I was very type A. I had the entire next 20 years of my life planned, and so I was like, no, no. And so, and I knew that was out of line for someone to say, but she said it from her core belief, and so it was just things like that. I just kind of turned away from it all, and also with the fact that I had an eating disorder and I had things going on in my personal life and my own mentalities bothering me. I didn't feel like I was ever in a church that felt safe for me to come clean about that, and that's really sad to look back on. And so for a while, I just really turned away from church, and that was the only place I was really hearing about God. And so I, turned away from God also, to the point where whenever I went to therapy, I remember sitting in my therapist's chair, and I didn't feel safe sharing things in church when I was a kid, and whenever I was a teenager and even a young adult. But I did feel safe in the church world, if that makes any sense at all. I remember sitting in my therapist's chair, and I wanted to get plugged in with people that were my age, and the only place I really knew where to do that was a youth group. And she was like, well, do you want to, I know of several youth groups around, and I just remember sitting there sobbing, and it was like my first session with her. And
she did
and I was
good.
like, I just don't know if I believe in God anymore. Yeah. And so, that's heartbreaking for me to look back on. But I remember kind of the moment that I hit my rock bottom with the things that were going on in my life, and my eating disorder kind of maxing out on top of that. And if you'd like, I brought the journal.
Sure.
I started journaling in throughout therapy, because it was kind of an assignment of mine to try to figure out my own feelings. And it was February. This was the year that I started going to the Avenue. Man, my handwriting is so much worse now than it used to be.
February of what year?
2013.
So how old were you at this point?
Oh, gosh. I'm really good at math, I promise. Yeah, 21? So 21. 21.
So you're 21 years old.
Yes, I was 21 years old. And so...
And you were going to school at Navarro.
I was. Let's see here. Where is it? There it is. So I just remember this night, and this was, again, several years after I had started going to therapy, probably at least 2. I was still struggling with the eating disorder behaviors, and I knew everything in my back pocket, but I had binged this night. And it says, it was February 16th, 2013, and it says, I'm really just hating myself tonight. I'm tired, I'm depressed, I feel worthless. I hate the cellulite and flab on my body. Again, I was 21, so please no one take offense to this, but I have the body of a 40-year-old.
40 years old and 21.
I have a body of a 40-year-old that doesn't take care of herself. My mind is nothing but dust right now. I wanted to exercise today, but I felt too depressed to do it. I'm hot. I can't cool off. I was hot in my room. I feel dirty. I feel unwanted. I just feel bad. And all I have to look forward to do is more schoolwork. I was tired of school several more years ago. I want someone so bad to just come and sweep me off my feet, tell me how beautiful I am sincerely, and treat me like I'm worth cherishing and not just disposable. I want someone to love me so purely. I don't feel like I'm ever going to find it. I just really hate myself tonight. And I read that back and think, man, I was 21. Like I just had no idea what my life would hold for me. But what's very ironic about that is, and what means so much to me now is that when I read that back, I know that was also the night that I don't think I would have ever killed myself, but I didn't know where else to turn. And so the only thing I knew to do was to turn to church. And so I Googled churches in Waxahachie, and the first one that came up was the Avenue, which scared me to death because I had never been to a church with more than like 60 people, and the Avenue is huge. And so I was like, okay, I guess I'm going to go there tomorrow and to a huge church, and I'm going to be super uncomfortable, and I don't really know what to do, but that's what I'm going to do. And I just remember going into the Avenue. I sat in the back row of this huge main hall, and I just watched. And from the legalistic preaching that I had heard, from all my discomforts in the church, I saw, as a de-churched person who did not like it, I walked in and I saw an environment that I did like, and it was really where I heard about who Jesus was for the first time, and how he wanted a relationship with me, and how he died to have that relationship with me, and how he rose again, and I have victory because of that. And that gospel that I heard is really what changed my life that day. And it didn't take a hold of me very quickly. It took several months before I really felt like that was it. That was what I needed. But whenever I got into Celebrate Recovery and really holding on to some of the scripture, and really kind of letting Jesus touch my moments that I was having a very hard time and trying not to turn to the things that I had turned to for several years, that was really when my life changed, and my behaviors changed, and my perspectives changed. And so, yeah.
Well, that may be a good point. Let's talk about how has your life changed since then? Tell me what's been going on. You know, what all accomplishments you've done, and what everything. You know, where you got to where you are today.
Yeah, it's really funny you say accomplishments. Yeah. So
why is that funny?
Well, it's funny because I guess I don't want to jump from that point and make it sound like, oh, my life just did a 180 overnight. You know, like I said, it took a long time. I was involved in Celebrate Recovery for at least 4 years, and it took that long just to get to the end of my third 12-step attempt. Yeah. You know, and even now I still, you know, in regards to the issues we talked about, I still have issues come up. I mean, on a daily basis, if I'm not mindful, if I'm not intuitive, if I'm not intentional in my relationship with God, you know, there's been seasons that I have been, and my life my life has been better, and then there's been seasons where I've kind of put that on the back burner, and I find myself sinking back into old mentalities. And thankfully, like I said, I'm a pretty self-aware person. I can kind of be, okay, Marisa, you need to get it together. So having more grace for myself, that's a huge way that my life has changed. And that in general makes my days so much better than they used to be, even in the midst of feeling like I'm struggling. But since then, since I would say maybe the eating disorder wasn't consuming my life, and I was able to really kind of start flourishing into who I was made to be. Let's see, I graduated college. That was huge.
What degree did you graduate
well,
with?
I ended up switching to psychology when I transferred to Tarleton, and we had a big running joke. People only study psychology because they want to know what's wrong with them. And so, so I thought I was going to, pursue being a counselor after my experience. And I just decided that really wasn't something I wanted to do. I took some time off after college. I had actually been asked by a friend's mom of mine who I had known since I was 7 if I wanted to work with her at her company that she was forming. And I knew nothing about it. It was in clinical trials, and I thought clinical trials were scams, and I was just like, are you sure this is real? And she was like, I've been working in this industry for 15 years. I guarantee you my career has not been a scam. And I just didn't understand, clinical research. And so I started working with her, and career-wise, that's where I've been for the past 4.5 years or so. I ended up going to grad school for clinical research management, and I finished that in about 2.5 years. So I just graduated with my master's degree in May. And
so what degree is that?
It would be, it's in clinical research management, and it would be a graduate degree. So basically it focused on how to manage clinical trials, both from the research site, which is where I was working, where we were conducting the research trials for the pharmaceutical companies that were developing these new medications and studying them and making sure that they're safe and effective and tolerable by patients. And so I learned about how to manage trials from the site side of things, and I also learned how to manage trials from the pharmaceutical company side of things as well. And so I'm continuing my career that way. I actually just got a new job recently, and I'll start in a couple weeks. It's with a company. Basically, I'll be a clinical research associate. And I'll be traveling to the research sites like the ones that I worked at, and I'll be making sure that they're doing the clinical research studies according to how they're supposed to be done, or how they were designed, making sure that the site's keeping the patient safety in mind, monitoring their progress through the study, and making sure that they're conducting research according to federal regulations and all that. Which I'm very excited about. It's going to be a big adjustment.
So is this, you hear people talk about a drug getting through the FDA process. Mm-hmm. Is this what you're talking about?
Yes.
And,
yes.
And so what would y'all, is that am I not talking? Yeah. Is that so where do y'all fit into the FDA process? I don't know if that's a proper word or not.
So I'll kind of paint a picture for you. So you have different pharmaceutical companies that have these research teams that develop the new medications, these new treatments, whether it be for diabetes, whether it be for cancer. And so companies like I don't actually know if I can say these names on the air. I guess I can. But like Eli Lilly and Company, Johnson and Johnson, they have companies within their company that are specifically focused on research and development for medications. GlaxoSmithKline, companies like that. They'll develop these medications, and they have to go through a number of different phases of research before the FDA will approve them for use to put them on the market for patients. There's 4 different phases of research. The first is, your first in human trials. So after they've done a lot of preclinical research in just animal models and things like that, they'll do their first in human trials, and those are really just focused on safety. What's a dosage that's appropriate for humans? And we didn't do phase 1 trials at my site. We just weren't equipped for that.
How do they pick the phase 1 participants?
A lot of times they're healthy people and they're volunteers, and so in all clinical research studies, they're brave.
Brave, healthy people.
They're brave, and a lot of people see it as kind of like, oh, I'm just going to go be a guinea pig, and I suppose to an extent that's what you could consider yourself, but I don't see it that way. You
see them as a test tube?
I wouldn't say that either. A lot of people just think, oh, they've never researched this drug before and it's going into me for the first time, but that's really not the case. They have a ton of research backing phase 1 studies, and they would not start a phase 1 study before they have research to back it up that it would be, 1, worth it, that 2, it would be safe, and 3, that it would, make a difference. There has to be a reasonable cause to conduct a research study for a new medication. So if it if you've developed something and you want to do phase 1 studies, you've got to have the support to back that up and to make sure that you're not putting people at, just any kind of crazy risk. But when you are a volunteer, you go through a detailed consent process, understanding and reading the details of the research that's been done, and basically stating that, yes, I understand, I comprehend this, and I agree to volunteer to participate in the study. So phase 1 sounds scary, but really it's just studying that medication is in a very, very small number of people. And then you move into phase 2, which is kind of where the research starts that we were doing, phase 2 through 4. Phase 2 studies really focus on confirming all their safety information that they have found in research before, and continuing to monitor for new safety information. So they're not even really looking to see if it's effective, so to speak. They just want to confirm the safety information they have, and then they move into phase 3, where they may have collected a little bit of data about how effective a treatment may have worked. But phase 3 is really studying the safety and the effectiveness in a small group of people and then a large group of people. And then a lot of times the FDA will start to review that. They review it through the research process from preclinical to phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. But they'll start to look at those medications more for market approval after the phase 3 research is done and completed and they have results. So ultimately, it takes upwards of 10 to 15 years for medications to go through these processes. And then phase 4 a lot of times is sometimes before medications are on the market, but a lot of times it's after they're already approved and on the market. It's kind of like continuing research for any new findings, any new, if they're trying to get insurance companies to cover the medications, they'll do phase 4 research, it's called post-market studies. They may be comparing 2 medications that are already on the market to see which one's more effective. So it just kind of depends upon the scenario. But at my site, we did phase 2 through 4 research, and they're still doing that now that I'm even, not working with them anymore. And so what's really cool is that clinical trials provide people with certain medical conditions to come in, and maybe nothing has worked for them. Maybe they can't afford their treatment. Maybe they, haven't found anything that they felt good on. Things like that. People participate in trials for all kinds of different reasons. but the primary purpose is to advance medicine, and sometimes that comes for the person participating, and sometimes that comes just for people in the future. I know we did a lot of migraine studies for new medications that are being developed specifically for migraines, and a lot of people coming into those trials, they understood that they may not have seen any benefit from participating, but they, a lot of them in some cases had decreases in their migraine days, from like 20 days a month to 5 days a month, or even 10 days a month. Some of them went away completely. Medications are going to impact people in all kinds of different ways, but for someone with migraines, that is a huge change in their life. And so I'm thankful to have been able to see through clinical trials those types of changes and see how that impacted their life, and know that it's going to impact a lot of people and kind of be on the front lines of medicine. It's really cool. And so for me now, going into my new position, I hope that, I feel like I came from a very good research site. There are sites out there that, there are some that just don't have much care for the ethics, for the safety. But then there are sites out there that really do uphold, and plus some, the regulations and the principles of ethical research, and making sure that their patients come number one priority. And I feel like my site was the picturesque site of that. The owner worked as a CRA, the position that I'm going into, for 15 plus years, and kind of just saw a lot of bad examples and got fed up with it. And so she opened her own site so she could make sure that research was being done well. And not only, the people may have, these sites may have been doing research according to all regulations and safety principles, but then they had no care for the integrity of the data that was being collected. And so that matters for patients in the future. So I hope that going into this new role, I'll be able to kind of use my experience and help sites be even better sites. And
what does CRA stand for? Clinical Research Associate. And so what's your certification? What's your title, the letters after your name?
Yeah. So I worked for 4.5 years at this research site as a coordinator. So I was a clinical research coordinator. About 2 years ago, I got certified as a clinical research coordinator. So I went through one of the professional organizations in our industry, and I became a certified clinical research coordinator / professional. So.
And now you've got a master's in.
I do, yes.
Clinical research management.
Yes.
Does the FDA approve? Do you have to get approval to go from phase 1 to phase 2 to phase 3 on each drug, each step?
Yep.
And how does our approval process, you said 12 to 15 years, how does it compare to other countries out there?
You know what? That's an interesting question. I honestly cannot answer that. I don't know. But, the regulations for research, whether it stems from informed consent, from those historical bad examples of people that did not give their consent for research to be done back in like the 40s and 50s, and even into the 70s,
what was that deal where they gave them syphilis or something?
Yeah, I believe that was Tuskegee.
Yeah,
Alabama, I believe. And that's, those are the stories that people hold on to when they think about participating in clinical trials, but they don't know how much the regulations have changed because of, and even been developed, because of those bad examples. And so participating in a clinical trial, honestly, is a very safe thing to do. The regulations are so strict now that a lot of times a person off the street might not even qualify to participate in the study because there are so many criteria that you have to meet in order to be able to qualify, whether that be based on your medical condition diagnosis, whether it be your history of the condition, whether it be other medical issues that you have, even down to, do we think that you're going to remain compliant with this medication? Do we perceive that you're only in this for the compensation that you get because you're traveling and spending time at our site? How
much is the compensation? I didn't mean to
it's fine. Compensation for clinical trials ranges at my site typically in the phase 2 through 4 research. You're coming in for a number of visits. It may be 2. It may be 16. It just kind of depends on the length of the study, but the compensation depends on what different procedures we're doing for the visit, how long the visit lasts. If it's going to be a simple visit where we're just going over your medical history and medications, we're not even drawing any lab work, then it may be $25. Some visits require that you fast for 8 hours or complete some like a diary or something like that, and you have to bring that back. So there's some additional compensation involved, especially if the visit lasts a long time. So from our site, most of our studies, the visits would be about $50 a visit. Sometimes it would move up to $125 if they had to be fasting, or if the visit was going to be like 3 hours long or something like that.
Can anybody walk in off the street and say, I want to participate in a clinical trial?
Yeah, anybody can express interest in a clinical trial. Anybody can see if they qualify for a clinical trial. I know at my site, our process is basically if somebody is interested in participating in a study, they reach out to us, and if we have a study that they might qualify for based on the information they provide, then we'll go through a pre-screening process over the phone and see if they meet kind of the initial criteria to qualify. And then we might bring them on site for a screening visit. And the screening visits are really where we dig into some of the criteria of the study to make sure that they would be a good candidate and it would be safe for them to participate. For example, somebody on a medication that they're taking for diabetes may not qualify for a diabetes study, or if they're taking a medication that may be an issue with the medication that we're studying, they might not qualify. But it really just depends on the clinical trial and the criteria involved. Each one is different.
Are there any drugs we need to be looking out for to get any neat things coming down the pipe?
So I don't think I can give specific information, but I can talk about the migraine medications coming up. What's been really cool over my experience at my research site, which the name of it is ClinPoint Trials, by the way. Shout out again. Yeah. We're a research site here in Waxahachie, and we've been here for about 4.5 years. But over that time, we've done several migraine studies. And the thing about migraines, I've never struggled with them, thankfully. But they impact a lot of people, and mostly it's women, but they impact men too. They're not really sure what causes migraines, as far as I'm aware. But in the past, all of the medications provided for migraines have actually been medications that treat other things like high blood pressure, or epilepsy, or things like that. There's never really been a medication developed for migraines until several years ago. Within probably the past 5 to 10 years, they've developed these what they're called are CGRP antagonists or antibodies. And basically what they do is that they target CGRP, which is found in the body, and they basically block that CGRP from being able to do what it's doing. And a lot of times is what they found is that CGRP has a lot to do with inflammation. And so if you think about like a lock and key on the brain, you have your neurotransmitters, and where those neurotransmitters bind, the CGRP comes to that space and wants to bind there. The antagonist medication or the antibodies, they block that zone from the CGRP trying to bind, and so therefore the CGRP can't bind and it doesn't cause the inflammation. That's kind of the premise behind these medications, and that's probably like a very layman's way of explaining that. You can talk to a doctor for more
So it's a preventative to keep.
It's basically a preventative, yes, and so focusing on that CGRP, they've developed these antagonist medications for migraines, and they have found to be very effective at preventing migraines from coming on. It may not be that they prevent them completely, but they are causing a lot, that class of medication is causing a lot of hype in the migraine world because it's like finally something that is working. And so I believe the first one just got FDA approved within the past year or so, and I think you're going to see probably a couple of other companies their developed medications getting FDA approved as well within the coming years. And it does take a while for those medications to hit the market after they're FDA approved. It's not an overnight process. The companies have to brand their medication. They have to name them. And they have to get them marketed, for patients. And that takes a lot of time because of the amount of money it costs to conduct clinical trials. They come out onto the market and they're very, very expensive, which is very frustrating for patients. But a lot of people don't know it costs about $1 million a day to conduct a clinical trial. And if you think about that cumulative...
$1 million a day. I'll go back and say that slowly.
It costs $1 million a day to conduct a clinical research study. And there's so many studies that are done for one medication. And so if you think about it that way, when they hit the market, it's understandable the companies have to make up some of those funds. And it really sucks that it comes down on the patient.
I am not going to feel sorry for Big Pharma.
Yeah. I know. I'm thankful that I don't work in like sales for a pharma department. I could not do that. I don't think morally I could do that. But being part of the research process, and seeing it actually be developed and impact patients in the process in a positive way, and knowing that, several years down the road, there's going to be that option is going to be available for people, and hopefully it's going to be feasible for people to pay for. That kind of helps me, see it in a more positive light. But I think people just forget that, it's like developing a product. It doesn't happen overnight. And the amount of work you put into it, you've got to get some kind of return on your investment. Easy for me to say since I have no medical conditions and I'm a 26-year-old healthy adult, but I'm sure I might see it different if I had, if I was prescribed medication.
So if somebody wanted to do a clinical trial and they wanted to pick a credible or a morally good clinical trial facility, is there a way that they could verify or check them out before walking in and saying I'm interested in doing
Better Business Bureau?
Yeah. Well, so with clinical research sites, I don't want it to sound like they're just all over the place conducting bad research. That's really not the case. It's like very few probably sites out there that are not doing research well. But coming from inside the walls of the research site, understanding the regulations, understanding the different processes that are important to take a patient through during the course of the study to make sure that they're thoroughly informed at all times, that they consent to everything we're doing, even if it's just vital signs. We're not doing anything crazy. What you can expect at a clinical trial visit is like a very detailed physical at your doctor. We're going to go through everything, and we're going to monitor your health very closely. But the main thing, if I were a patient walking into a clinical research site, you go on their website, make sure it looks credible. A lot of times they might be a standalone research site. It may be a trial that your doctor's conducting in his office. His office can be a research site. So there's all kinds of different sites you can participate in: hospitals, academic research centers, dedicated research sites like ClinPoint. But look at their website, make sure it looks credible. You can use the information they have about a study. It might be limited because there's only so much you can provide on a website. You can look up the studies on clinicaltrials.gov. Every FDA regulated trial, which all of them are listed on clinicaltrials.gov, and that's a public website. And each trial lists the doctors that are participating in those trials. So you can confirm that a trial is the real deal by going to that website. And you can also learn information about the trial and read about why that research is being done. You can read about some of the criteria that you might have to meet to participate in that trial. And then if you decide you want to participate, or even if you're just interested and you want to go talk to the site about it, talk to the doctor there, talk to the study staff there. The main thing as a patient that I would look for, and something that, as a coordinator, my job was to coordinate the care of these patients coming in to participate. And so my most important priority is just that they're informed of what's going on. And that comes through the informed consent process. So if you walk into a site and they give you the informed consent document, which by regulation you're required to sign, stating that you understand the information that you've been provided and that you agree to participate. If you are provided that document and not given time to read it, or the study staff or doctor sits down and says, "This is what the study is, let's sign this document together," you should, a thorough informed consent process is really where I would feel the most safe as a patient. I would be looking for them to give me details about the study, to give me time to read through the informed consent document, to give me time to review that with my family if I wanted to answer my questions thoroughly, and to the point that I feel confident that they're answered. And then, just giving me time to decide whether whether it's an easy decision or whether it's something that takes me a week or two or maybe a month or two. I've had patients that their doctor that they see on a regular is the doctor on the study that's conducting it. And they just, don't feel comfortable, and that's fine. There are other people that walk in and I might not even want them in the study because I don't really trust that they're in it for the right reasons, and we've turned people away for that. We've had great patients that are participating for the right reasons, and we've had patients that it's clear that they're not in it for the right reasons. They just want the money that comes with it. And so that's probably the main thing that I would look for.
All right. Now I want to turn to why you kicked my ass so bad.
Yeah, it's so much fun. It's just so much fun. That's why I do it.
The result. Think about the result.
So, Vance, you take my body pump class.
Yes. Let's hear more about this.
And body combat is coming up.
Yeah,
So really not anymore.
Oh.
Not anymore. And
body combat got killed?
Yeah, and really, I guess it's my fault in the end, because since with this new job, I'm going to be traveling 50 to 75% of the time, which basically equates to probably 2 or 3 or more days a week. And so I've actually had to cut back 3 of my body pump classes. So now I'm only going to be teaching on Saturdays, which is really, really sad, but I'm glad I can at least keep that.
Yeah.
That's the one you kicked my ass.
Yes, it is. And but
Darn,
body combat, body combat, I just went to training for that and I passed it. And what I was going to have to do was I basically had 60 days to film myself teaching a class to get certified. And that was my plan all along until this job fell into my lap. And knowing that I'm only going to be basically available on Sundays to teach, and that is my only day now that I would not be working in some form or fashion, I just felt like, for the sake of my own personal boundary, this might not be the right time to take that on. And then with that certification, through the company that it's through, Les Mills is the company that develops that format along with Body Pump and a number of others. They come out with new material every quarter, and the instructors they pay for that. It's like $35 every quarter, and so there was no guarantee that a class would be put on the schedule at the facility that I teach at, and then at least not soon. And then also considering that I don't know what my availability is going to be like, and I have a deadline, I just felt like it was more practical for me to say, okay, I'll return to this later if the time is right. But as for Body Pump, that's my first love, and I will continue it.
Well,
and I will continue to kick your ass in it.
Well, tell them what body pump is.
Yeah, so Les Mills Body Pump, it is something that's been it's been around since like the early 90s, I believe. But it's a 55-minute strength training class. It's a group fitness class. We use light barbells and free plates, and we focus more, not so much on getting the heaviest weight that you can lift, but hitting a high number of reps. And the effect of that, you develop strength, but the biggest effect of it is that you develop a very high amount of muscular endurance, and you also will see that, in the class, as you guys probably have experienced it, your heart rate goes up, so you get a little bit of a cardio burn too, and it's definitely something that's changed my body, developing long, lean muscles, but ultimately, Body Pump grounds you, and it makes you feel strong from the inside out, and it's all back to awesome music, and it's all choreographed to the music with different timings and tempos, and so it's something that, yes, in the moment does not feel very good, but something that when you get to the end, you're just like, I just did 1,300 reps.
Yeah.
Nobody on the gym floor can say that.
Yeah.
No better or worse, just different.
I want you to know I hate the lunges.
Yeah.
I think that's probably one that everybody hates the most.
Hey, lunges are great. Lunges are great. Some of the lunge tracks, the choreographed lunge tracks, they are tough. They are tough ones, and especially coming 3/4 of a ways into the workout, and then you've got to do lunges, and you're like, "What? Are you serious?" But yeah, it's lately those tracks they've had a lot of squats in them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But the lunges are coming back. I can guarantee
shit.
you.
You're stuck.
Shit.
I'm getting better at my lunges. I get better at it.
You're still gonna have some squats in the tracks. Don't worry.
All right.
Don't worry. But
so tell me how the Les Mills we were talking to a guy named Pete McCall. He went to a comedy show with us in Addison, and he's a certified master trainer, and he trains different people. That I asked you one time if you had been to a seminar in Dallas. You said you'd done it the year before or 2 years. That's where you got certified in something. I forget the name of the seminar it was, but he was in town teaching at that conference.
Oh, okay.
At that and
SCW.
Yes.
Okay. Yes.
And I think that's it.
Yeah.
But he said that each gym, he asked where we worked out, and he said, well, they contract with Les Mills. Mm-hmm. So does that mean only Les Mills can be taught those type of classes at that gym?
No. I mean, there are some gyms that are like branded as Les Mills specific gyms, which basically means what they offer are the Les Mills class formats, and they have several, all kinds of different formats, from cardio to strength training to yoga to high intensity interval training. But no, gyms like Gold's, they're open to all kinds of different classes. I mean, they have Zumba, they have like regular bar and Pilates, they have aqua, things like that. But how it works is Les Mills, they have a licensure fee that comes with their formats. And so if a gym wants to offer their classes, they have to purchase the license for that class. So the reason they have that, I mean, they're obviously a business. They have to make some money off of what they're producing. But the music that they use, they have license agreements with the artists of those tracks. And so, some companies, they use a lot of like quote unquote workout music, and you can just tell it's just not that great. Yeah. But you walk into a Les Mills class and you're going to hear Pink, you're going to hear 30 Seconds to Mars, and it's not cover songs, it's the real thing. So they've got to pay, for those songs to make their product quality. And so these gyms, they'll pay the licensure fee for the program, and then they are able to offer it. So Gold's does have to my understanding, some type of contract with them to where Gold's as like as a nationwide club, they can offer those formats probably maybe at a discounted rate. I'm not for sure because I'm not in the Gold's management, but yeah. So any gym that wanted to offer a Les Mills class, they could just purchase the license for it.
Well, any other training certificates or licensing or anything that you've got in your resume?
That's about it. Clinical research and body pump.
Yeah, that's right. Both ends of the spectrum.
Yeah, I would say clinical research fulfills my my drive to dot all my I's and cross all my T's. But teaching a class like body pump, Les Mills as a company, I really admire them. They're a big company with a small town feel, or not a small town feel, a small company feel.
Well, I like small town feel.
I like
too.
small
That's
town
where
feel as
we're
well.
from, yeah.
But yeah, so they have a motto, and basically the premises of it are to be brave and change the world and inspire through different fitness. That's their realm, is fitness, and so inspiring people through that realm is kind of how they intend to change the world, and they rely on instructors to be brave and teach those formats to impact people. And I would say, especially considering my history, being prompted, I was prompted 3 times in one day to teach body pump, and maybe it was because they were desperate. But I loved the workout as a participant, and that drove me to feel like, okay, I guess I could maybe teach this, but I did not want to be up in front of people teaching this workout. But what I have found is that being an instructor, it's forced me into a place of discomfort that the only possibility is that that magic has to happen there. It's like you have your comfort zone, and then where the magic happens. And teaching for me was like was so outside my comfort zone. And but what happens in that place is that I'm forced to really let myself go and get out of my own head, because it's not about me. It's about the people that I'm looking at in the room and making sure that they're getting a good workout experience, a good fitness experience. And so that for me has been like just forcing myself to step into that role. It's really given me a sense of freedom and really made me feel kind of unleashed to be who Marisa is.
Say that again.
It's made me feel unleashed to be who Marisa is, who I'm supposed to be, or who I am just in general. Day to day, you don't always let those things. You don't always let yourself shine. And when I'm teaching, I'm focusing so much on the people in front of me. If I'm stuck in my own head thinking about me, these people aren't going to get a good fitness experience. So it's definitely taught me a lot about myself, for sure.
So tell them, if someone wanted to come to your class, when can they come?
Yeah. So Gold's Gym, Waxahachie, Saturdays at 10 a.m. That's when I teach now. It cut down 4 times a week.
They have other classes the rest of the week.
They do.
They
have a lot of other classes throughout the week. Body Pump in particular is the most popular class at the gym, and it's offered every single day at different time points. And so you would just need to log on to goldsgym.com and check the schedule. But if you wanted to come for the first time, and if you're not a member at Gold's, you can go for free for your first time. You would just need to sign a waiver. So you go up there.
Because Marissa's going to kick your ass.
And if you walk out, rolling on the floor, crawling out, or if you throw up like my boyfriend did, shout out.
Yeah.
That was before we became official. So that was how he, hooked me. No, but if, it's not my fault, basically.
So the first time he came to class, you made him throw up?
Oh gosh, he's gonna hate me for this. it's just a funny story, so I'm going to tell it. We our whole story is interesting, but when we first started dating, he was still trying to convince me that he was worth dating. So he came to my body pump class. He knew that was one of the most important parts of my life, honestly, and it's something that gave me a lot of joy, and he wanted to experience that. I don't know why, but he did. And so that I told him, I was like, you are going to experience joy, don't you worry. But no, he came to I was teaching at 5:15 in the morning on Tuesdays and Thursdays at that time.
And I want to repeat that she's working a full-time job, going to graduate school in clinical research management and teaching body pump at 5:15 in the morning on 2 days a week.
Yeah.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
It's been fun.
Yeah.
No, I've been waking up at 5 a.m. since I was a kid because I had to ride to school with my mom. She had to be at the school early, so I had to be at school early. So I've been trained. But no, he came to my 5:15 a.m. class, and he was a college athlete, but he had not done really any weight training in a while, and so it just hit him hard. And he threw up after class, and it's all good. And I accidentally called him babe that day, and because I get very when someone's sick or anything like that, I get very like motherly, I guess you could say. But I accidentally called him babe. And then he came back on Thursday, and that was when I knew he did not have an ego about him, which was very attractive. And so I was like, you threw up in front of me, and you're back. I don't know why you're back, but you're back. And he did great that day. So, sometimes it's just that first initial body pump experience.
Yeah.
Throws you for a loop.
I can speak to that as well.
Yeah.
So where do you see yourself going? What's the future look like? Well, you said you're type A, that you've got your 20 years planned out. What's the next 20 years look like?
Oh gosh, I dropped my 20-year plan several years ago. But yeah, I did kind of stop planning out my life, but I see myself career-wise. I see myself continuing in this clinical research associate position, getting some good experience there, and I'll probably stay in the clinical research industry for as long as the Lord wants me there. I also probably next year, this can go on record. So this is breaking news here. Breaking news. I'll probably be getting married next year.
All right, congratulations.
Yeah, in late November, and
So is this? I don't see a ring.
Not yet, but it's coming.
It's coming.
It's coming.
So he's already asked you. So you.
He's talked to my parents already. So it's just
this
a
is
matter
not
of
you
time.
asking him right now.
No. Yeah. He referenced marrying me on our very first date twice. So, maybe that scares girls away, but for me, I was like, hey, you're 27 years old and you want to get married, okay?
Yeah.
And so, no, but I'm confident that
it's on the record
he's the
now.
one. Yeah. Yeah, it's on the
official.
record.
It's on the internet now. It will be in 2 weeks. In 2 weeks, it'll be on the internet.
Speed that up.
That's funny.
Yeah, I'm kind of slow. I'm behind. It takes me 2 weekends.
Yeah, no, I'm pretty confident in 2 weeks nothing will have changed. So
I guess you can call me and I can take that out if you want me to in 2 weeks.
It's not coming out.
But once it goes on the internet, I don't think it's ever coming out.
I know. Yeah, no. I'm very excited. He's a great guy, and if it weren't for my mom, I wouldn't be dating him. But I wouldn't have ever met him had it not been for my mom. So, yeah.
What's in clinical research trials management? I know I'm butchering it.
Yeah, no, it's fine.
What's the pinnacle job in that profession? What do you strive for there?
Well, I honestly, I've never been a person that's really relied solely on getting to some kind of pinnacle in my career. I want to work in a job that fulfills me, that I feel like I'm making a difference. And with that industry in the direction that I'm going, honestly, it would be a job that completely allows me to work from home, probably with little travel, where I get to lead others and help them become work on their development in the industry as well. And hopefully that will allow me, really good flexibility for a family in the future, and, while still being able to, make a good life for myself with my new husband in the future.
That's a pretty good 20-year plan.
Yeah. And I've also, flirted with the idea of maybe opening my own gym in the future, not a full service gym, but specifically like a group fitness gym. Probably specific to Les Mills, because I just really love their company and their formats. They are classes that anybody can do, regardless of what fitness level you're at, and wherever you're at on the fitness spectrum, it's going to challenge you.
Well, you took me in at over 400.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't go with you. I was like, I'm not doing that.
Yeah, that was a fun day, and I still look back on that picture that we took with Monica, and I look at your face, and I'm just like, I just see a completely different person in you, and in me, and in Monica. I mean, but especially you. It's just you've just flourished into someone that I did not meet that day. But I was so inspired by the fact that you didn't quit.
Well, thank you.
There's 1,300 reps, and you may have hit 100 in that first class, but you'd never quit. And I was so inspired by that and encouraged, and especially to see you come back.
Well, we enjoy the class. I mean, your super positive attitude, bubbly attitude, and you're definitely our favorite class up there.
Oh, good. I'm glad.
There's something I've been dying to ask you that we've since we gotten to know each other. You have, when I first started that class and you knew I was trying to lose weight and stuff, you hooked me up with a guy named Alex Hemp.
Yeah.
And
my brother.
That's what you called him, your brother, and said y'all used to live together.
We did. I lived with his family.
Yeah, see, I gotta hear how you lived with and how that was, and that just seems like
I lived with him. Does he sound crazy?
Yes, there seems like some stories. There's something there. I can feel it. That's why I want to dig into it.
Oh yeah, no. Whenever I first started going to the Avenue, which sounds weird, I'm bringing that up, but I promise I have a point. It was probably December. They started an outreach team. It was just kind of their first impressions team. They had like an information desk, which is where I went, and I was very impacted the first time I went there because someone took the time to be like, "Oh, you're a first-time guest, and I want to make you feel at home, and you're not going to walk into this huge church of 3,000 people and not know where to go." And so, they made this new team. And
wait a minute, let me show Kevin his picture of this guy.
Oh, this is going to make the story even better.
Yeah, let's see. Let me.
Oh, there's the future husband.
Yeah, that's my future husband.
There's the future. What's his name?
His name's Clint.
Clint what?
Clint Kempsey.
Is he from around here?
No, he's not. He's only been here for a little over a year.
Oh, he's a newbie.
Yeah.
Where's he from?
He has just navigated south his entire life. He was born in, oh gosh, I'm a horrible girlfriend. He was born in the north, and then he moved to Kansas, and he went to high school in Topeka. That's where he spent most of his time, and then he moved to Oklahoma for college, and then he found himself down here, and he lives with his brother and his sister-in-law while he's finishing school and working. But yeah, that's Alex.
This is Alex Hemp's Facebook page,
and
he was a drummer for the War of Ages.
Yeah.
And that's a hard rock Christian band.
They are a metal band out of Ohio, or I'm sorry, Pennsylvania, Erie, Pennsylvania. Yeah. But yeah, they're a Christian metal band. Metal band that.
Is he still playing for them?
Christians? No, he's not. He's pursuing new opportunities that just abound with him. He's involved in so many different things. He is one of the best people on the planet that I know. One of the most caring hearts. Doesn't look like it. He looks like he's going to kick your ass.
Yeah.
But he's actually just a big teddy bear. Don't let it fool you. But yeah.
Well, tell us how
he
you
would kick
come to live.
ass.
Yeah, tell us how you come to live with him.
So, well, through the avenue, through that new outreach with the First Impressions, it was guest services, and we started right before Christmas, and in 2013, and him and his wife Natalie and their daughter Caroline, they came to the avenue for the first time. They had been living down here in Lancaster, and they were going to be moving to Waxahachie, and they were looking for a church, and so I greeted them in the parking lot. And yep, that's me and Caroline. When I met her, she was just a year old, so she's the closest thing that I have to a daughter, and I just love her with everything in me. But yeah, so I hosted them through their first time at the Avenue, and what's really interesting about that is normally I might spend like 15 minutes before and after the service with people that I host through. But with them, I spent a good probably 3 hours with them. They got there really early, so I got a really good chance to talk to them before. And I just remember, Alex came up, and it's not every day, unfortunately, that you see someone coming to church with tattoos from their neck down to their feet. But I really liked his beard. At the time, I was really into baseball, and I was thinking about Brian Wilson. He was a pitcher for the Giants, I believe, and they had just played in the World Series not that long ago, and so that was the only thing I was thinking. He's got this awesome Brian Wilson beard, and but no, when we were checking Caroline in, he was telling me what he did, and I was like, oh, I've never heard of your band before, but I listened to metal. You wouldn't know it by looking at me, but I do have a little bit of a metalhead inside me, mainly from my time at Baylor when I was very unhappy. And I would just listen to like screamo metal on my way on my way home from Waco. But I listened to some bands that his band had toured with before, so we bonded on that. And then after they ended up losing something while they were at church, and so I ended up talking to him and his wife for like another good 30-45 minutes or so. I just thought their daughter was adorable, and but we connected, and I stayed in touch with them. And then when he went back out on another tour, I got to hang out with his wife Natalie, and we also just really bonded. And so whenever I would serve at church, I would serve every other Sunday, and Natalie started serving with me. They continued coming to the church, and so I would just end up spending the night on their couch, so we could ride together. I was living in Ovilla, so it was kind of a drive, and but we would ride together to church, and we did that for a very long time. And I really wanted to move to Waxahachie and out of my parents' house, and they were like, we have a room. And I was like, I need to save as much money as possible. And they weren't going to charge me much to rent a room, much cheaper than I could get an apartment myself, that's for sure. And but I just thought it was awesome that I could, live with friends. And they're like my second family. Aside from my parents, they're the closest thing I have to family around here. And I've been able to bond with Natalie's mom. I've been able to bond with the kids. Now they have another kid, Troy, who I've known since before he was born, and so yeah, I love them very much.
How long did you live with them?
I lived with them probably almost 2 years. I just moved out. I guess it was last October is when I moved into my house, and that's when I moved out of their house. So, yeah. I got to be Caroline's sister for a while, which was really fun. But yeah, they're great people. Alex is a great guy.
All right, let's see. We've been talking for an hour and 39 minutes.
Gosh.
Can
Wow.
you imagine that?
Wow.
It goes fast, doesn't it?
It does go fast.
Hey, is there anybody you want to give a shout out to that might listen to this thing?
Clint, if you're listening, I'm really sorry for telling the fact that you threw up in my first class. No.
Hey, Clint, she's going to tell that story the rest of your life in every social setting that you ever get into.
No, it's all part of the greater story of us. So, you know.
That's
yeah. So, but no. I mean, shout out Mom and Dad. I'm on a podcast.
Your first podcast.
They don't even know what podcasts are, so I'll have to explain it and have them listen. No, but yeah, this has been fun. I've loved it.
Well, thank you for coming. I mean, this is you definitely meet the definition of extra usual.
Oh, thanks.
You talk about you hear stories about stereotypical millennial, that won't do anything.
Yeah.
And hell, you're teaching classes at 5:15 in the morning, going to school, full-time job.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, you make me tired just thinking about everything that you do. So. You when I started this podcast, I knew that I wanted to get you on here, and especially with your bubbly attitude and your transparency and
thank you.
So I knew that I wanted you as a guest, and I hope whoever listens enjoys it as much as Mary and I have had meeting you and getting to know you.
That's awesome. Thank you. And I hope that anybody that listens, feels like they connected in some way they get something out of it.
Yeah, inspire others. What would you say the Les Mills
Be
motto?
Brave and change the world.
That's what you're doing. You're being brave and change the world.
Yeah.
Whether through medicine or physical exercise.
Yeah, exactly.
That's right. All right. Now, wait a minute. We usually ask Kevin for the name. Kevin, do you have a name for the podcast? The name of Kevin wasn't feeling good today.
Be brave and make a difference.
You think Les Mills would get mad if
yeah, that's true.
Be brave and change the world?
I don't know. I don't know.
How I learned to be brave and change the world.
Yeah, maybe how I learned to be brave, or gosh. We talked about a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. And all kinds of different realms of information. Yeah, maybe how I learned to be brave.
All right. That's probably it. That's what it's going to start out being, unless I think it's something different. But I think it's going to, even if I change it, it's going to stick with the brave and the theme. And I think that's because that's what you've done. You've faced life head on and become brave and become happy with yourself.
Yeah.
Accepted yourself.
Yes.
And that's what we got to do.
Yeah, absolutely. You've got to be brave to be who you're made to be.
Yeah, that's right. I like that.
Yeah.
Be brave to be who you're made to be. Mm-hmm. Did you make that up, or is that a quote?
Yep, I just came up with it right on the spot. I'm really not good at that.
There you go.
So if that's good, then great.
All right. Well, Marisa, thank you for coming, and we really appreciate it.
No problem.
Be brave to be who you're made to be. That's pretty prophetic by Marisa. I mean, how was that for opening up your heart, opening up your life, opening up yourself to the world? That to being that brave at her age to come in here and to share about herself like that. I mean, that is outstanding. There's no way I could have talked about myself like that at that age. I don't know if I can still open myself and be that vulnerable like that. So I think Marisa's definitely brave, daring to be who she's made to be. She has that braveness. She's able to do it, man. I mean, what a beautiful person inside and out. Clint, you're a lucky guy. You're committed now. You've been married by the Church of the Extra Usual, so there's no going back. You've got a life partner there in Marisa, and I want to thank y'all for listening. I want to thank Marisa for coming out. I want to thank her for not taking it easy on me and body pump and kicking my ass. I just think it's She restores my faith in the millennials to see somebody working that hard and committing to goals and doing the things she wants to do. The future looks bright for us with people like that in our world. I also want to give a shout out to Dylan Sowers. He gave me 4 different audio tracks of original music that he drafted as proposed themes for the Extra Usual podcast and blog. And I chose 16 seconds of one of his tracks, and so the intro and exit music are compliments of Dylan Sowers. I want to thank him. That is awesome, giving me some music. That's something I can never do. I don't have a musical bone in my body. But if you know Dylan, thank him for the music. Thank him for the riff. And that gives us something to play in and play out. And it feels almost Grateful Dead-ish, which is right up my alley. So thank you, Dylan. Thank you, Marissa. Thank you, Kevin and Mary. And we will see you next week.